Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Ali Ingersoll. Today we'll be talking with WRAL sports journalist Chris Lee. The Panthers wrapped up the season going 2-15. That means they're not only last in the NFC South, but they had the worst record in the entire league. In their last two games of the season, they were shut out, failing to put up any points on the board. While there wasn't too much drama or excitement on the field because of games like that, there was plenty of it off of the field, including a coaching switch up mid-season. Now the GM is out, and of course, a temper tantrum in Jacksonville. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. A lot to talk about today.
So much. I can talk about the Panthers for hours.
We really appreciate you coming in and joining us to talk about them. So let's start with the team itself and the season. The good, the bad, the ugly. Share some of your thoughts after seeing all of these games. What are your takeaways?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is just how disappointing the season was, because you felt like the Panthers could possibly take a step up. And that was one of the things that they told us. They felt like, as an organization, they were just a quarterback away. And fans, I guess, believed it because they were in the dumps for the last 3 years. Fans didn't like Matt Rule as a coach. You get a new coach, you talk about his offensive prowess, you put together this great, on paper, coaching staff, and then the season starts and none of it goes right. The coaching staff apparently didn't get along with each other. They were going behind each other's backs to telling each other, to the owner. And then the quarterback didn't get a chance to play the way that we expected, mainly because he wasn't protected and folks weren't catching balls. So everything went wrong for the Panthers this year, in a year that was supposed to be them taking a step forward.
Yeah, watching the games were kind of painful in moments.
Very.
And there is a lot of talk about that quarterback position. They put a lot of investment into that. But what does a team need moving forward to make sure that they have some targets and he is protected?
So they definitely need to retool on their offensive line. A local kid who went to NC State, Ikem Ekwonu, they took him in the 2022 draft at number 6 overall to be that left tackle to protect Bryce Young's blind side, or protect the quarterback of the future's blind side, because Bryce Young wasn't there yet. And this was his second year in the league, and he just didn't do well at all. He was actually one of the worst left tackles in the league. And when you're picked that high in the league, in the draft, you're supposed to be one of the best. And so he just hasn't lived up to it. So he's going to be good. I think he should probably move inside to guard. But they need a left tackle. They need more on the offensive line. And they also just need wide receivers who can separate and who can actually catch, because Bryce Young didn't have that this year. And he also didn't have the coaching staff to put him in the right positions.
So a lot of needs, but a lot of challenges with rebuilding, like the fact that the Panthers don't have a pick in the first round, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So can you just remind everyone how we got to that position, why they don't have a pick, and how do you think they'll make some moves so that they do have a first-rounder?
Well, I don't think they'll make a move to get a first-rounder, because that means giving up more picks. And one of the reasons why Scott Fitterer, who's the GM who got fired, one of the reasons he's in the position he was in is because he gave up so many picks just to fix the quarterback position. They can't afford to give up more picks. All told, Scott Fitterer traded away 11 total draft picks and 2 superstar players for one position. DJ Moore was a part of it, and one of the picks they traded away ends up being that first overall pick in the 2024 draft. So there's so much that's been leveraged just on this one position, and you cycled through other quarterbacks who are part of those trades for that position, like Sam Darnold, like Baker Mayfield, and others. It's put them in a really weird position. So now, where fans thought that after 3 bad years they'd take a step up, you kind of have to temper your expectations, because they probably won't take another step for probably another 2 years, because there's so much building they need to do just to have the basics. And so that's pretty much how we got here. The trade up to get to number 1 overall to pick Bryce Young. You send that first-round pick from last year and this year, and you end up being one of the worst teams in the league. So now the Chicago Bears, they get DJ Moore and a number 1 overall pick coming out of it. I mean, the Chicago Bears won that trade up and down.
What is their first pick this year? What round will they be?
They'll be picking in the second round, so they'll probably have the first pick of the second round. So close to a first rounder. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas, any thoughts about who they might take or what position they'll go after?
It's probably too early, but you would think that at this point it's going to have to be somebody on offense, whether it's a lineman or a wide receiver. Those would probably be the two positions of the greatest need. But it also depends on what they do in free agency. Free agency is going to begin in March, and that's going to be a month before the draft. So they're going to probably hope to fill in a lot of positions just from free agency because they don't have as much draft or draft capital to go out there and get the guys that they probably want this year.
And they'll have to see who's on the board by the time that second round does come around.
Yeah, and there'll still be good. I mean, there's good players in the second and third round as well, but you're definitely you don't get access to the best. There's a reason why guys go in the first round, but a second rounder isn't bad.
So a lot of rebuilding. We'll touch more on that after this break. All right, welcome back. We discussed what was happening on the field this season, what could be coming. There's arguably more excitement off the field, though, and in the front office this season. So first, let's talk about the move this week, firing the GM. Can you talk a little about what we know went into making that decision?
Well, if you just look at it, Scott Fitterer was there for the last 3 years, and I talked a little bit about it before. During his tenure, he traded away Christian McCaffrey, who was an MVP candidate this year for the San Francisco 49ers. They traded away DJ Moore, who was a very well sought-after wide receiver and somebody that Bryce Young probably could have used this year. And other draft capital that we talked about. And his role is to make sure that whoever is the head coach, Matt Rule or Frank Reich, has the best roster possible. And the Panthers roster, since he's gotten here to Charlotte, has continuously got worse every year. And you don't help it out by trading away good players. He always said he was in on every deal. And I like to say he got hosed on every deal, honestly. And, a lot of teams won their deals against the Carolina Panthers, and so that's one of the reasons why he's out. The Panthers don't have a comparable NFL roster compared to some of the better teams. So you need to get a GM who's going to come in and settle the ship in a way, and then put out a competitive team for a head coach to have success with. That's one of the reasons also why head coaches get fired, because GMs don't put together good teams for them to have.
The team revealed 8 candidates who that they're talking to. Can you talk a little about some of these people and what you're thinking that they might be looking for to fill this spot, and any any rumblings you're hearing about who will be the lead? There
are different people out there. I know they've been talking to a few guys, who are with the Cowboys, another one with the Falcons franchise. That's ultimately going to be up to the person that is going to mesh well with David Tepper. Is David Tepper going to allow that person to work their job and not meddle in the situation? That's really been his problem. He gets way too involved, and he's not a football guy. He's a hedge fund guy. So let the football guys make the football decisions and give them some time to do so. So I think that would be the best GM candidate. But I think that person needs to have a track record of not only helping to put together a great roster, but also drafting well. That's what the Carolina Panthers have been missing the last few years.
And you just touched on this a little bit. There is coaching turnover as well. So they're not only interviewing for a GM, but also a head coach. They also released some of the people who they're hoping to talk to there. Who are some of those candidates? And honestly, is this an attractive job for a head coach because of their inability to keep someone in that position?
Well, there's a lot of factors as far as who would be, but Ben Johnson is the one that David Tepper has not been shy about saying he wants. Ben Johnson is from North Carolina, played high school football there, went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And so he also helped the Detroit Lions turn around as their offensive coordinator. And so with David Tepper wanting an offensive-minded coach, Ben Johnson is one of the fastest rising superstars in the NFL, and he's from the state, young guy, about 35, 36 years old. He would be probably the perfect guy in David Tepper's mind. The problem is David Tepper has let go of 2 coaches before him very early and didn't let them see through the process. He also is in a bad situation with the roster that we just talked about. So with other openings out here like Tennessee, Atlanta, you have Washington, you have the Los Angeles Chargers, Las Vegas Raiders, those might be more attractive jobs than the Carolina Panthers. So he's going to have to overpay whoever it comes in there. He's going to have to overpay them to come to the Carolina Panthers. But that would be probably the main guy that David Tepper goes after, and he's going to have to compete with other teams to get him.
you're not sure if it's a super attractive position because of that turnover.
Yeah. And, with the way like Matt Rule came out saying like, hey, I thought I had more time. We said that, it's going to take a while. And I came into the third year thinking I'll have more time. And then you see Frank Reich getting fired. No coach has been fired that fast in 45 years in the NFL, right? So it makes it very unattractive, especially when you have an owner who has let go of people too fast and also has public temper tantrums against other fans at when you're visiting other stadiums. It's not attractive for people to want to come, especially when you can go to another team that probably has a better roster already put together.
You really just set me up for this great transition because that's exactly where I want to go next. What is the story behind this, behind the temper tantrum, behind throwing a drink at the Jags fans?
So what we know is at the end of the Jaguars game, the Panthers, of course, were shut out in that game. They lost. There were some fans that was caught on video were talking to David Tepper, probably saying some not nice things to him. But that's football. That's fans. Like, you're the owner of the team and your team didn't score and my team is winning. I'm going to let you have it, right? And he threw a drink on the fan and threw his cup down and walked away. And even though that's like a rude thing to do, you shouldn't do that to anybody. The biggest part about that was evident to me through that video. Scott Fitterer, the general manager he just fired this week, was standing next to him and literally did nothing. And to me, that was indicative of the way the Carolina Panthers franchise has been ran. All David Tepper, nobody can really give their input. And Scott Fitterer, like if that was my boss, if that was our boss, throwing a drink on somebody, hey, hold up, we represent WRAL. We need to pull that back a little bit. That's going to look bad in the community if we do that. I'm going to go talk to that person immediately. Versus Scott Fitterer stood there with his hands in his pocket. That just shows that he didn't feel confident in the fact that he had a voice to even say something to his superior. And so hopefully with new people in the organization comes a new attitude with David Tepper in the way that he runs the Carolina Panthers organization.
That's really insightful. I really appreciate that. So finally, when you think of teams with wildly long playoff droughts, in my opinion, the Panthers aren't in that chat quite yet. It's been a few years, but obviously there are other teams where they were more than a decade, right? You think of the Bills, you think of the Lions, the Jets, those kinds of teams. So I guess when they're rebuilding, though, they have good draft picks, and that's how they rebuild. And then they have consistent coaching. So what do the Panthers need to do to make sure that they don't enter that chat, to make sure that this playoff drought does not go on forever and ever?
Oddly enough, you can look at the Jacksonville Jaguars we were just talking about, because the Jaguars historically haven't been a good franchise. They came in the same year as the Carolina Panthers, and there's been talk in past years about, are they going to move the franchise? You've seen games where the stadium is empty and fans in Jacksonville just weren't into the franchise. All of a sudden, they bring in Doug Peterson, who had to come in and help revive a second-year quarterback that team just drafted number 1 overall the year before, who had a bad coach who was fired in the middle of the season, and turn it around to where now the Jacksonville Jaguars are a team to be reckoned with. Does that sound familiar? Because it's basically the Panther setup. Basically right now, if you get the right head coach and the right GM and you let them just do their job, within 2 or 3 years, you can be back on the right track. And it's possible in the NFL with the way the NFL is set up. The NFL is set up so the worst team can end up becoming the best team within a couple of years. And it's set up to where if you're the best team, if you don't take care of what you've got, you could become the worst team in the next couple of years. It's just one of those types of leagues. So really, this is all about getting the right people in and David Tepper minding his business.
And when you do that, you get buy-in from the fans and buy-in from the city, and then that really can change the entire attitude around this, and we aren't sitting there on Sundays frustrated.
Yes, and I don't know if you saw what the Atlanta Falcons game looked like at Bank of America Stadium back on December 17th. They say tickets distributed was 70,000. It looked like there are only 20,000 people there in that large stadium that can hold 78,000. So yes, we just kind of hope that it turns around, and it can turn around. You just have to get the right people.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in today. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can find more podcasts from WRAL News at WRAL.com. Just search podcast. From sports to true crime, there are plenty of other shows to keep you informed and entertained. Thanks for listening.